Welcome to the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host and one of your commissioners. My name is Frankie, and sitting across the internet from me is Cam. Cam, how are you doing on this lovely Saturday evening?
Yes, it is Saturday going into Labor Day, and I'm just here standing at the stand-up desk of my house wearing this championship belt because this is the last podcast before Week 1 officially starts, and I'm once again amongst the rebel in fighting for a championship.
Please don't tell me you're actually wearing it, and if you are, is this across the shoulder or is this across the waist?
I'm wearing it like a belt, dog.
Like a belt.
Full
Okay.
send.
Old school. Old school. I feel like people
Uh-huh.
nowadays, they wear it on the shoulder. Am I right about that?
You'll see both, but it's definitely more common than not.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome in everybody. This is going to be our draft recap. We're going to go over everyone's teams, talk about the wins, the spectacular fails. We'll look for the stretches. We'll look for the values, and we'll kind of talk all that way through. We'll talk through the decisions that were made, and that will kind of prep us for week one. And yeah, we're going to launch right into the season, and we're going to start right here where it always does at the drafts. And let's get started. How's that sound to you, Cam?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, where to start other than the 101 with Austin Lassiter taking Jay Jetta and Justin Jefferson? We kind of surmised that we thought he might go with, Christian McCaffrey at the 101. He instead decided to go with Justin Jefferson. I mean, not much analysis having here. This is pretty common 101 pick. But overall, maybe a little surprised he didn't go running back with the first one.
Yeah, I mean, the allure of Christian McCaffrey is always there, but I do think Justin Jefferson's the right call, and it's what I would have done if I were Lassie.
Yeah, I overall would agree with that as well. So just looking at Lassie's team, he stacked that then with Chris Olave, who's very much a high upside second round guy at the turn, and then teams that with that's he turned with Jonathan Taylor. Rest in peace, Lassie. Well, it was fun while it lasted, Lassie. You know, the first overall pick. It was fun while it lasted, but your season's officially over, unfortunately.
Okay, that's a little dramatic. I mean, sure, Jonathan Taylor's not playing the first 4 games minimum, but that could happen to anyone come week 1 with their running backs. So I still
It
think he's got a
could.
shot, and he's got 2 decent to high upside backups with Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams. Both could be bell cows, could be, committee team running backs on bad teams. Who knows?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, to me, like as someone who drafted Le'Veon Bell in this holdout year, I mean, I know it's a very different situation, but I don't know. I can't help but getting flashbacks, which is why I really like that he did go for. You mentioned Javonte and Miles Sanders, and then pairing that with the Jalen Warren pick later in the draft. I thought that was really a good job there by Lassie. Um, Staying in the Steelers' house, he went for his receiver 3 being George Pickens. I'll be remiss to mention that he went ahead and took Kittle in the 4th round as well. But he rounds out his wide receiver room with Pickens, Christian Kirk, Kadarius Toney, and then Nico Collins all the way down there. And that's about it for the draft. He went with 2 quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, an excellent pick, a very Lassie-esque pick for the 16th round, and then has Dak in there as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to like about his team. Of course, with the 101, you you have the 10, you're gonna have a pretty nice advantage at the beginning of the draft. I love the Chris Olave pick. Like I said, we'll see about Jonathan Taylor. If I'm Lassie, I don't love the fact that I'm going in. My running back 1 is Miles Sanders, but hey, if that's the price for Justin Jefferson, I guess that's the price you pay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of projection on Lassie's team. Miles Sanders and a new team. George Pickens and Chris Olave both being projected to just be more, I guess, effective this season. So we'll see how it goes for him. I think if it can turn out well, but it's a little sketchier than I would have liked coming out of the draft.
Yeah, same thing with Kadarius Toney as well. Yeah, looking for some second, third year bumps for these guys. All right, number 2 overall, we have Greg, who in only the boldest of strategies, this declines to take someone to put in his wide receiver slot for the first 5 rounds, starting off with Christian McCaffrey, of course, with the 102, Josh Allen, Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, 2 guys who I just so coincidentally took in another league, actually on the same team. But then does start getting the ball rolling with Brandon Ayuk, who is looking to every year we're kind of projecting the Ayuk to take that next step, and he has taken that pretty much year after year. So we'll have to see if this year is the year he really launches himself into becoming the wide receiver 1 in San Francisco. Hollywood in Arizona, and then Zay Flowers in Baltimore, and then a couple other depth picks in Zay Jones and Ross over in Kansas City. He does go ahead and take 2 kickers in the 10th and the 11th, and then he, I think as we mentioned during the draft, he did end up taking 3 tight ends in this draft. And I have no analysis. I'm just going to leave it there that he took 3 tight ends in this draft.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting strategy when you take the second tight end of all the teams taking tight ends. So someone that you would expect to play every single week. And so it's a little questionable. I do think it's interesting. I did notice earlier that Greg went pretty heavy on the Ravens, Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, and Zay Flowers. They are one of the offenses that's had a lot of reason for optimism with the new play caller.
Right.
So if they do break out, like some people are expecting, that could be a good stack for Greg.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like something this kind of starts a pattern that we'll kind of see on a couple different teams here, but some interesting stacks with these people, with some of our guys really just buying into entire teams' offenses, it seems like. Next up here, we had JP at the 103. Of course, picking Jamar Chase, pairing that with the big man, and then DK in the 3rd. Taking Jay Herb in the 4th, I think I do like. Then Madison and Kamara. Kamara is someone who I wanted on my team, so that sucks. And then, picks Dalvin Cook, Kendrick Miller to round out his running backs. Picks up Mike Evans and Odell Beckham Jr. With Isaiah Hodgins, and then, of course, none other than Josh Gordon to round out his receiver core. Goes with Njoku for tight end, a pick I liked as well. Goes pretty early on defense with the Cowboys, and then doubles that up with the Steelers in the last round. So, yeah, I mean, I like a decent amount of the picks here. To me, Cam, am I wrong here? Like, what is it about Alexander Mattison that I'm not seeing that people are this high on him?
Volume. Also, he didn't pick Alexander Mattison. If you'll remember, there was a trade.
My God. Yes, of course.
So that was actually Dylan, who we'll get to later, and we have to swap in DeAndre Hopkins for that pick for JP.
Right. I'm so apologies, team. Team. Apologies, league. Yeah. Okay. DeAndre Hopkins. Okay. Okay, that's fine. He picked the receiver that went to the team where receivers go to die. That's so much better.
Yeah. JP has a type, I guess, with wide receivers. All of them are big, tall, strong, fast, and 2 of them are very old. So, nothing wrong with that. I do really like the strategy that JP might have gone with, getting Alvin Kamara alongside Dalvin Cook, because Dalvin should at least be more involved in the Jets running game while Breece Hall is still recovering. We'll see if that actually works out, but it's pretty good later pick to get solid running back value while Alvin Kamara is serving his suspension.
Absolutely. Awesome. So next up here, so this is what we're talking. This is what I'm talking about when we're talking about stacks. I mean, this is a stack for the ages. All right, we're talking Jake Logan. We're talking Tyreek Hill. We're talking Waddle. We're talking Tua, we're talking all in on the Miami offense, at least the passing
Also, the
offense.
Miami defense.
And
Drafted
that's
them as well.
that's crazy. Um, yeah, that's a lot of faith. So yeah, that's one of those things where I feel like all of them were good picks for their value, at least ADP wise. No, none of them were like particularly huge reaches. I don't think. I just I don't know. I feel like the math on this just doesn't work out in his favor, right? It's like something about this just doesn't like quite add up to me. It is really scary to go against. But like, okay, in the event that Tua, who who's done a lot of like jujitsu in the off season and has found ways to avoid concussions, like okay, if Tua is out, I know it didn't sink Waddle and Hill's seasons last year, but it definitely put a damper on the second half of Waddle's season. I don't know. It just seems like a really, really high. It's a really high variance play with a really, really low floor. And I guess fortune favors the bold, but I sure wouldn't feel comfortable with it.
I I don't have a problem with it. So Jake actually was the first one to arrive to my house on draft day, and was just kind of talking his first round pick strategy because I picked after him, so it didn't really affect me what he was talking about. And yeah, he came up with this idea and got really excited about it. And I was like, you know what? It's not a bad plan. If you don't win the league, who cares if you come in second or 12th, right? And this is a
Yeah.
strategy to win the league for sure. Uh, yeah, and then when the draft came, my man just sent it really hard. First two picks and then two in the seventh. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah. So I mean, I think we are similar. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable with it, but like honestly, like I said, like the ADP made sense. Like the value is all good, and it's like it is a potentially league winning play. So you got to commend him for that at the very least. It pairs out his receiving room really strong with T. Higgins, Drake London, Deontay, and then picks up Hawkinson as well. Maybe a little bit higher value than I would have been comfortable at, but to each their own. And I owned him last season, but I don't know. I'm not. I guess there's a world, of course, where any of these guys end up like the tight ends, two or maybe even one if Kelsey has a down season. But I don't know. Do I really see Hawkinson rising above 3 or 4? I don't know. But I just want to put something to you, Cam, and see your opinion on this. I propose that you're no longer allowed to call your strategy a zero RB strategy if you draft 6 running backs in a row. What do you think?
Uh, if they all happen after the second half of the eighth round, I don't know what could be more zero RB than that. Like,
That's a fair enough
my
point.
man drafted a bench player before his first running back.
Yeah.
I I actually really like what he did with his wide receivers and tight ends because I feel like T. Higgins, Drake London, and Deontay Johnson, while not world beaters necessarily, are all locked in for volume, and that will give him a
Right.
really solid floor with his extremely volatile uh, running back or Dolphins stack, and I guess running backs too because who knows what's gonna happen with them.
All right, and we're back. A bit of a technical difficulty interruption there, but I believe Cam was just about to tee up talking about Jake's running back situation. Considering that at the end of the day, we do like his players he picked, his receivers, quarterback, tight ends. However, you still do have to start 2 guys in those running back slots.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know a lot about what's all going on with the Seahawks running back situation. So Charbonnet in the eighth round seems rich, but who knows? Maybe it'll be more of a 1A 1B rather than
Right.
running back one, running back two. Uh, and I guess it's kind of his hope for his next 3 running backs in AJ Dillon, Zeke, and Damian Harris, who I think in that order have the likelihood of being able to provide at least 5 fantasy points a week. But then his last 2 picks, Ty Chandler and Zach Moss, I think are good kind of upside options, especially now that we know Jonathan Taylor's not playing for a while. Zach Moss could be the bell cow there, and Ty Chandler has been getting hype as maybe even better than Alexander Madison. Dylan doesn't know what he's talking about, that's for sure.
It's true. I will say that, a bit of a spoiler for my team, but you know, Jake did manage to handcuff three of my running backs, and it makes me nervous because if my season goes to hell, it might just mean success for Jake, which is like the worst scenario.
It'll be like inverse of last year when
Yeah.
all the backup running backs he gave you and popped off.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Kenneth Walker won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on here to Devin's team. Devin starts off with a really balanced mix of receivers and running backs, going 2-2 to start, with Eckler and Mixon in 1 and 3, first and third rounds, and then Devontae Adams and DJ Moore in that second and fourth, and then capping that off with Judy for his first 5 picks there. Nothing too crazy to write home about. I mean, Devontae's been a bit of and Eckler actually have been kind of divisive figures in terms of fantasy value this season. People think that might be difficult I don't know. It would be remarkable if Eckler remains on the touchdown pace he's had over the past 2 seasons. And, Devontae, seems to be quarterback proof, but it'll really be put to the test this season. So 2 guys who I think can perform very well, but I don't know. I am going to the draft. I felt uncomfortable thinking about either of those players personally.
Yeah, I think Devin handedly won the oldest average age of your first 4 picks award.
Yeah.
And with that kind of proven talent you get with Eckler, Adams, and I guess Mixon too, you get a lot of just you don't know where the cliff is. And then, like I said, with Adams, just the Raiders offense, I can't put my trust in at this point.
Right.
But honestly, when I was kind of skimming over all the teams, you're going to kind of get this naturally when you get a more balanced team. It looks, I don't know, just more appealing to the eye. But I feel like Devin's team is the one that I like the most just because, you got Eckler and Mixon, who could both be, high-end RB1s. Mixon, maybe more of the back-end RB1. I personally high on David Montgomery. Just, I don't know, from being a Lions fan, I expect him to be very involved in the running game. You'd like, personally, to have 2 different wide receivers picked in the 4th and 5th round instead of DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy, just because Jerry Jeudy's injury history and DJ Moore just trusting Justin Fields to throw the ball. But I don't know exactly who I would have gone with if I was in Devin's position. Not really many people higher, I guess, there. And then just some solid depth. Antonio Gibson, Jamal Williams, Michael Thomas, all, people that have shown value in fantasy and should have roles on their teams at the very least. And Freiermuth in the 7th, I like. And Daniel Jones in the 12th. Yeah, just solid team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like Freiermuth. I really like Daniel Jones in the 12th. He was who I had my eyes on for going into the draft. It didn't bounce that way. But yeah, he does that. Yeah, except Devin, he started off balanced. And I agree with the analysis on Judy. Like, I had Judy last year in a different league, so I was a little bit burned by him. So I guess I'm more down on him just on my bias in that way. But yeah, the injury history is definitely there. But again, like, would I rather have him or McLaurin? Probably McLaurin a little bit, but I can kind of see either way. And then I don't know. It's kind of tough value wise at that point. Yeah. But yeah, balanced team. If Jake's team, his composition was made to win the league or lose the league, Devin's comp is to be competitive every week.
Yeah, as long as none of Devin's old top round picks bust out, I think his team is going to be solid. But there is, always that chance, especially with the age that we talked about.
Right. Alrighty, next up here we have Daniel taking over at the 106, taking Saquads, and then pairing him with Patrick Mahomes on the 207, which is, I guess, right around where his ADP is at, if I remember correctly. Pairing that, he goes then wide receiver heavy with Devonta Smith, Amari Cooper hoping for a bounce back season from Deshaun Watson and Cooper himself. Pairing that with Waller, getting that giant stack going. Waller getting a lot of positive buzz out of Giants training camp. Pairing, and then up next we had DeAndre Swift and Quentin Johnston. Then we go defense in the Niners defense. Dalton Kincaid. So for his second tight end, look, I know he's a talented guy, but the track record for rookie tight ends is abysmal for a reason. Youngway, who we didn't even know how to pronounce the name of, which, in my opinion, is grounds for removal from the roster. Mostert, a good pickup in the 11th. Thielen, Jacoby, Myers, Kendrick Osborne rounded out. Aaron Rodgers, 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, early defense, 2 kickers. I don't understand Daniel.
Yeah, I think Daniel kind of had his guys and wanted to get them. And there are times where I thought it was good, times where I wasn't as much of a fan. Saquon at the 1-6 was probably the most surprising pick of the first round. But yeah. I don't necessarily blame him. Saquon's probably one of the safer options among who was left available, probably besides Kelsey and Diggs and maybe Chubb. But it's not a bad pick, I guess. I really wanted Darren Waller, and that was definitely tilting when he picked him 2 spots ahead of me.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Daniel. But then following that up with DeAndre Swift and Quentin Johnston, both, I guess, high upside, but 0 floor for this season. I think Daniel's draft was saved by getting Raheem Mostert in the 11th round and then Jeff Wilson being mysteriously injured for possibly the whole season.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Swift pick was definitely someone, he was basically off my draft board. You know how the NFL scouts will say that sometimes, you're off the draft board. Yeah, there was almost no value where I was going to take DeAndre Swift, but I did take Rashad Penny in all of my drafts. I also wanted Waller for sure. Yeah, I didn't think about it when I started talking, but yeah, if I was Daniel, the 106, I'm slamming Bijan every time that round personally. But, hey, Saquon showed last season what he can do, and there's no reason why he can't do it again. And, what probably will be an overall regression year for the Giants, but, if anything, we've shown that Saquon is everything for the offense, and he'll probably continue to be that way this season as well.
Yeah, definitely not my favorite team, but some solid picks in this draft that could save it. I mean, he's got Mahomes, who's going to make him competitive no matter what.
Right. All right, perfect. Next up, we have Tyler, who starts off with a pick. Is Tyler regretting this pick at this point?
Yeah, you can't
definitely
not regret it.
Yeah. Unfortunate, but you got to go in with the knowledge that you have, and that's all you can do about it. He goes in with first off with Cooper Kupp. Some developments in the recent days that have made at least when in the draft I did yesterday in an ESPN league, mind you, Cooper Kupp almost dropped to the 3rd round. So it's yeah. And then pairs that up with Josh Jacobs, Deebo Samuel, Damian Pierce, Terry McLaurin for a very balanced start to his roster. Then picks his own quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. You love to see that kind of support internally, I guess. After that, we go Pacheco, JSN, a player I wanted on my team for sure. Brian Robinson, Schultz, Rashee Rice, Darnell Mooney, Pat's defense. Picked up CJ Stroud at the end, pairing with Trevor Lawrence. And then both Dalton Schultz and Sam Laporta, interesting enough there. I don't know. I feel like not that there aren't good players on this team, but I feel like the conversation starts and ends with what's going on with Cooper Kupp right now.
Well, and it's not just Kupp. He also got Terry McLaurin, who hurt himself in the preseason and might not be good to go to start the season. Jackson Smith and Jigba broke his wrist in the preseason, might not be good to go to start the season. I don't think Isaiah Pacheco was healthy. I think he's been on pace all offseason to start the week 1 game, but not healthy enough to play in the preseason as the offseason is going on. And then obviously Josh Jacobs had his holdout, so hopefully he'll be good for Tyler come week 1, but he hasn't been practicing with his team until pretty recently. There's some good pieces here, but it could definitely be a rough start. I'm not upset that I played Tyler week 1. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess like the JSN, we know about that for like a while though. So I guess I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, that's the risk you take. I don't know. It's yeah, like I said, deep pieces. I mean, Debo is someone who I think like I think people are undervaluing Debo this season. So I think to me, I think it's a good pick in the middle of the third. But yeah, lots of variance, not the kind of variance you like to think about, like in terms of floor versus ceiling, how they can play. It's just injuries and everything else. It sucks. That's the game.
Yeah. I do really like Damian Pierce too in the 4th, though. I feel like that's a solid pick. He's got a lot of just people that will get carries in Brian Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco, Damian Pierce, and Josh Jacobs. How effective their offenses will be, besides Isaiah Pacheco, we'll see. But I'll get volume.
Yeah. Alrighty, Cam, we're up to you. We starting off running back heavy with Bijan and Pollard. You pair that by evening out with Calvin Ridley and Christian Watson. You then go with Goddard, who of course would have been Darren Waller. It sounds like at that round is what if Daniel hadn't stolen from you. You go Mike Williams. You pick up Justin Fields again for the run back from last season. Speaking of run backs, you got Gabe Davis back on the roster, Treylon Burks, Bateman. And then we round out your running back room with a couple picks here. McKinnon, you handcuff your own running back. Jeff Wilson, of course, unfortunate injury news there. And then Marvin Mims in the 16th with Jags defense and McManus. So I'll let you take the lead, Cam. How did you feel about your draft? Did things go to plan? You have to make things up on the fly? A little bit of a mix, or how are you feeling then? How are you feeling now?
I guess I'll just kind of talk through how the night went for me. So you were telling me earlier that I surprised you by picking the 8th slot. And the reason I kind of did that is because I thought that there were 8, like a solid tier of the first 8 players. And that was, the first 9 picks we had in our draft minus Saquon Barkley. So I was kind of just expecting to take whoever was last there, but then I got the pick between Bijan and Travis Kelce, and that came down to 2 years ago I had Travis Kelce, and I just didn't like it. So I went Bijan. And then come round 2, it was kind of the same thing where I was expecting, to pick between Tony Pollard, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Garrett Wilson. That's kind of whoever falls to me, I'll be happy with. And it was Tony Pollard. So that's kind of how I ended up with a running back start. Not what I was expecting. But after that happened, I was just like, okay, I'm going to trust these people are going to play well and hammer the other positions. And then, dude, I was so nervous for so long because the thing I felt most strongly about going to the draft is that I want Calvin Ridley. And then as the draft order is selected, Tyler Walker picks one spot in front of me in the 3rd round. And like, Jesus Christ. If he just has any insider trading, he's just going to be like, all right, Calvin Ridley. And then if he doesn't pick Calvin Ridley, does that mean I shouldn't pick Calvin Ridley? Oh, God. But I sent it. And then probably reached on Christian Watson the round after because I just didn't know who to pick. Because I definitely would have preferred probably Damian Pierce, but didn't feel like I could get a running back again. And then, absolute tilt pick with Dallas Goedert. That's easily the pick I regret the most in the draft. I've been frantically searching the internet for Dallas Goedert propaganda since I made that and hasn't gone well. And then
you used to watch film from last season. You did pretty well.
Yeah, no, there was one just NFL podcast where they talked to some Philadelphia beat writer, and they just said Dallas Goedert has looked really good in camp. And I don't know where that was from or if I'm making it up or not, but that was enough for me to be like, oh God, I didn't get Darren Waller. There's tight ends here. I guess Dallas Goedert, sure.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, Justin Fields I felt like was falling pretty far. So that was just kind of scooping up value as far as I was concerned. And then, dude, come double-digit rounds, I was like, here's my list of high upside running backs that I want. Elijah Mitchell, Tank Bigsby, Roshan Johnson, Ty Chandler. And it's just like, when you do mock drafts, no one actually, or the computer doesn't actually care about this. But then we draft with everyone else, and 4 of them are taken in between my 2 picks. And the one that's left is my handcuff that I wasn't even like trying to handcuff, but I was like, I guess he's the only one that's still good, so I'll take him. Yeah. I don't know. I feel okay. Yeah. It was more of a tilting draft than most of them, but I feel like I also went in with too solid of a plan and not as enough of a plan B.
Hey, I hear you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last year, my draft, I felt like, was probably the smoothest draft I'd ever had. It just, like, everything just kind of largely fell my way. And none of that happened this year for me. So I was up next here. At the 109, never in a mock draft had Kelsey ever fallen to this spot. It has pretty much always been Cooper Kupp, occasionally Bijan, because Saquon, as we said, was never really taken that early in most of these mocks with the computer. But Kelsey fell to me, and I don't know, like, is it because I had Diggs last year and I'm a little burnt from how the season ended? Maybe. But I said, you know what? Well, I'll say this, like, when doing my mocks, I had a really hard time ever drafting a tight end at any spot that I liked the value at. So I was like, well, I will just do this and I won't have to worry about it. That seems great. So yeah, I go Kelsey overall, which is like so off script. I was like, this is absurd. And then, it comes around to me and I have a decision to make. To me, it is a very clear decision in the second round. It is either Pollard or it is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I saw that, Cameron, you are next after me, and I thought I should just take the Detroit player. So that's what I did, and went from there. So I don't know. Suck it or you're welcome. I don't know which one.
We'll find out, but yeah. I was happy either way.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the next rounds go not according to plan, because I'm like, well, I get my pick in the third round, and I really like Debo and Calvin Ridley, who, of course, didn't get to me. It was okay. That wasn't that wasn't incredibly common to happen, I guess. It was. So I'm like, okay, now I'm staring down. I need to go running back here, I feel like, because there's still good value with receiver a little bit later on the draft. And I really, really like the value of Gibbs. I thought Gibbs would have been awesome. Got to go. But I just took a Lion, and I just couldn't justify stacking it. I just couldn't justify it. I don't know. I couldn't do it. So I went with Old Reliable and Ramondre in the third. And then speaking of Old Reliable is Aaron Jones in the fourth. Yeah. And at this point, like, literally, I have not drafted these 4 players, I think, in literally any of my mocks. So I'm like, well, might as well keep it going and draft a quarterback early. So went that with Burrow. Again, I kind of liked the value at the spot there. And then one guy who I wanted to leave this draft with, absolutely no questions asked, was going to be Tyler Lockett. So I was happy to smack that in the 6th. And then, the draft kind of goes from there. I liked James Cook in the 7th, seemed good value. I like what Jahan Dotson could be in Washington. I picked Elijah Moore high last year, and I'm going to pick him at a lower value this year and hope he actually plays football and is decent.
We call that the Gabe Davis.
Yeah, literally. And then, Rashad Penny, I like the value because DeAndre Swift has never stayed healthy his entire life. And Rashad Penny, has his injury history as well, although, like, it does seem that he doesn't really he doesn't re-injure a lot. Like it's always something new, which I don't know if that's better or worse, but either way, it's different. So I like the upside of there, and then of course Sky Moore and. Anyways, it goes from there. Don't have too much to say about the rest of the draft. But yeah, that was off script. I had never quite done a draft that off script before. And it was a good lesson, like you just said, to make sure that you always have multiple plans in place because things might just go to hell and you got to think on the fly.
Yeah. Couple picks that I really like for you are Ramondre. I feel like getting that in the back of third is good. I was not happy when I was like, oh, if I pick Calvin, I know he's going to fall, but it was fine. And then James Cook, also, I agree, good value in the seventh. If I were you, I would be concerned with receiver depth just because, like, Lockett is solid and always finishes well, but, just a year older and finally another receiving option in the passing game. Dotson I do like, but, young and a lot of projection there. And then I guess same with both the Moore brothers. You got lower.
Right.
But, I mean, you got Travis Kelce, you got Amon-Ra, you got Joe Burrow. You have a solid core. And as long as a few of these picks hit, the team is going to be scary. So
yeah.
Hopefully they don't hit.
Yeah, every time I've looked at my team, I just keep looking. I'm like, man, I really wish I had a little bit better here, a little better there. I'm like, oh, wait, I have Travis Kelce. That's pretty nice. Yeah. All right, team. God, I keep saying team. I'm like, I keep saying teams. I've been saying team at work so much recently. Yeah, it's terrible. God, I am the petit bourgeois. All right, everyone, we are back. Another stoppage, but we're back. Up next is Justin at the 110, going with Stephon Diggs, pairing him with another high-powered receiver in CeeDee Lamb in the second, with a high-powered quarterback in the third in Lamar Jackson. And then he finally goes running back in the fourth and fifth, pairing the current star of the Steelers running game and then the former in Najee and James Conner. Picks up Chris Godwin in as his wide receiver 3, who, we all love Chris Godwin, but I certainly don't love Baker Mayfield. So good luck with that. Evan Ingram in the 7th, good value there. Michael Pittman in the 3rd, and what's going to be probably a very volatile offense in Indianapolis this season, if I had to guess. Finally goes kicker in the 9th round, which I feel like is pretty late for Justin. I have to go back and verify. It was the first kicker selected in the draft.
Yeah.
But not by much, as we'll see here in a moment. He pairs that with Ravens defense, Elijah Mitchell, Boyd, Mingo in Carolina, Donovan Peoples-Jones in Cleveland, Higbee as his second tight end there. So, the strength of the wide receiver starters is apparent. He's got a locked and loaded quarterback with a new offensive play caller, which should be really good. Najee Harris, I have lots of doubts about in terms of him, being a truly elite running back in the league and in fantasy. James Conner, I like the value for that volume. But yeah, high sides, definitely that starting receiver group and the quarterback. And then, at least for me, some question marks in most other spots.
Yeah, I think the theme here is kind of DGAF about offensive effectiveness. James Conner, running back on Arizona, possibly a 0-win team. Chris Godwin, wide receiver on Tampa Bay. And yeah, I was looking. The next 5 wide receivers picked, I would all easily pick before wanting to get Chris Godwin. And then Pittman, again, another just, maybe not the offense that we don't trust, but the quarterback throwing the ball, just don't know how much I feel good about it.
Right.
Yeah, but like I said, he's got a good core. Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Lamar Jackson, all have very few question marks, I'd say, as far as early picks go. So it's got good there, and we can't refuse to mention the $125 of fab spent on Justin Tucker.
Did that happen? That didn't happen. What are you talking
That
about?
absolutely happened the night of the draft.
Really? How did I miss that?
It was a trade between Justin and Logan. Justin
Dang.
meant to trade only $25, but
Oh.
accidentally put in 125, and Logan would not provide a refund.
Oh, nice. Well, that shows you how much attention I've been paying. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Congratulations.
yeah, but that'll at least save Justin from having to start one of Chris Godwin and Michael Pittman, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's true. Um, yeah. I agree with the analysis on the receivers. I was very, like I said, we like Chris Godwin as a talent, but once I really thought he was going to take a Lockett, and I was like, okay, I'm cool with Deontay or Ayuk here, but once Lockett fell to me, I'm like, okay, this is pretty stellar value. But yeah, I do the DGAF on the offensive efficiency for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for there. All right. Next up, we have Dylan at the 111, going with Nick Chubb, and then the two pairing that with Garrett Wilson in the second, who's really risen up draft boards. Maybe it's that Hard Knocks bump. I don't know. But in that 202 spot, Jameer Gibbs in the third adds two more receivers in Keenan Allen and Nuke Hopkins. Oh, sorry, just
Nope.
kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I caught myself. Alexander Madison, thank you, as his third running back instead of the receiver. He then goes with a fourth running back in Brees Hall, and then his wide receiver 3 becomes Jordan Addison, who you flamed him for during the draft. If I'm not recalling incorrectly.
Homer.
It's fair enough. Khalil Herbert in the 8th, Sutton and Williams or Jamison Williams, I should say. We've got like 4 Williams in this draft. In the 10th, Tank Bigsby. And then here's that volatility I was talking about earlier. Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. Deuce Vaughn, the handcuff in Dallas. Picks up Cole Kmet as his super, super late rounds tight ends, and then pairs Richardson with Kirk Cousins. I guess pairs Addison with Kirk Cousins as well. I'm assuming is going to be the week 1 starter, and hoping that Anthony Richardson, has just a surprise breakout season in his rookie year and kind of carries him through there. But he gets that security blanket with Kirk Cousins, which is not a bad ad in my opinion.
Yeah, no, the tuning of late round quarterbacks was definitely saved him because having just AR would be sketchy for me. I mean, obviously you're gonna like the wide receivers and running backs when you don't pick a tight end or a quarterback or a kicker or a defense till
Right.
after round 12. I don't know. I I wouldn't pick Jameer Gibbs in the third just because I think that's a lot of trust in either volume that I'm not sure is there or efficiency that we don't know he has or not.
Mm.
Uh, but I did really want Keenan Allen, at least a part of the Chargers passing game. But then, yeah, 4 running backs in the first 6 rounds is interesting. I guess if you just kind of look at it as one or two of Jameer Gibbs, Alexander Madison, and Brees Hall, hit, and they all have the potential of being high end RB1s, then that's a way to look at it, I guess. And obviously Garrett Wilson, yeah, and not just Hard Knocks. He had that one drive in preseason where Aaron Rodgers just loved him, and
Oh
Dylan's been
yeah.
hurt by Aaron Rodgers so much that now he just wants it to help him, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think looking for that upside for running backs definitely there. With Khalil Herbert as well, looking for like an improved overall offense for Chicago and hoping
Oh
that he
yeah.
benefits from that as well, right? So, yeah. All right. I think it rounds out Dylan's team. And now we are on to the last team here, who was a bit of the star of the show, I will say. I got the most enjoyment out of these picks by far, as Logan tends to do with the decisions that he makes for his fantasy draft in most seasons. So he does start out here in rounds 1 and 2 with the AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts stack. Yeah, that is a choice. Does Hurts come back to him in the third round?
No way.
Don't wait,
There's
right?
no way. No way
Yeah.
he's picked
So
after Lamar.
yeah, I don't think so. So I guess I can see it. I guess if that's what you really believe, and hey, I was the biggest Jalen Hurts believer in the world last year, but that's because I could get him in the middle to late rounds. Um, I don't know. That the Eagles season last year was magic, and it'll be tough to see if they can like fully recreate that. But that's what he's betting on, and I don't know, he's betting on the best team in the NFC, so it's probably not a bad bet. I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know how to feel about this.
I think you just really don't like playing Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown week one. Your boy taking you down on Logan's team.
I mean, I'm not in love with it. You know, I'll be happy for what was a normal Jalen Hurts performance last year, which was putting up 25 points in the first half and approximately 3 or less in the second half. If we can do that, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, I do think that points on something that really is interesting with Logan's strategy because a lot of the offseason narratives have been Jalen or the Eagles offense basically put it into cruise control second half, fourth quarter last year. If they no longer need to do that, then they could go nuclear. And if that
Right.
happens, it's worth it for Logan. But if that happens, then the Eagles defense has to be worse. And they're not worth a sixth round pick.
Mm,
So Logan's kind of hedging here. And if I'm hedging, it's definitely not by picking a defense in the sixth round. I'll tell you that much.
right. Right. His next couple picks here, we have Travis Etienne, Ken Walker. Ken Walker, I think, has become more and more of a divisive figure. I guess both of them, but especially Ken Walker, as the pre-draft season or the preseason has gone on. And we're back. All right, third interruption, y'all. That is a record. I don't know if we've ever had one or more. At least definitely not more than one. But hey, that's
You're
the
a working
price
man
of
now.
yeah. That's the heavy hangs the crown of the boss, I guess. Anyways, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, two divisive figures, I would say, in the fantasy community going into the draft. Speaking of divisive, Kyle Pitts, Cam, who can speak
Wow.
on that. And then we're going to continue with divisive with Brandon Cooks in the seventh round. I actually do like him at his value there, I think, overall. I'm definitely in the Brandon Cooks is not cooked camp.
Beaver great, dude. Beaver great.
Yeah. So until he shows me otherwise. Rashad White, two kickers in Justin Tucker and Harrison Bucker, although we know how that turned out now. Samaje Perine, Devon A-Chain, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who has fallen from the heavens all the way down to the 15th round. McBride. Oh, and then Luke Musgrave, of course, another Beaver great. And then Juju Smith-Schuster to round out his receivers. So, yeah, I think we said what there is to be said about Logan's team. He is a man who does not care what your stupid graphs or charts say. He knows who's going to perform the best, and he's going to put him on his team.
Yeah, taking a page out of the Lions playbook from this last draft and bucking positional value. And hopefully it works out for both the teams that did that. So go Logan. You did mention Etienne Walker divisive. I think it's interesting that they're probably two of the people that had the earliest picks of backup running backs with Charbonnet and Tank Bigsby, both decently early picks as far as backup running backs go. But backing that up with Rashad White, who is projected for a lot of volume in a bad
Right.
offense. Not a bad idea. But dude, only 3 wide receivers by the time the draft's over. And not even 2 kickers at this point. Not exactly sure how confident I could feel being him with that going on.
Yeah, it's tough, right? When you have these like shortages on your team of positions, like you want to be really, really secure in the other ones, and you are with Jalen. are you with Pitts? Like, no, right? Like, it has
Yeah.
to be a resounding no. Like, and are you with the Eagles? Sure, okay, the Eagles. Yeah, but we talked about your take on that, which I thought was pretty accurate about they have to be as good as last year, whatever. But they've lost pieces in the offseason, and I have faith that they'll be just or similarly good. But they're not gonna get to 70 sacks again. Like, it's just statistically, like, it's just not gonna happen. So I don't know. I don't know.
There are teams we've talked about that have low floors that could bottom out, but I think Logan has the lowest.
Yeah,
Does
I
have a
think
ceiling.
great.
Etienne Walker, Hurts can all hit big, but sketchy.
Sketchy. It is. All right, Cam. That was our draft recap. Any other thoughts? Anything to get off your chest before week 1? Are you ready to rev in and face off against as we did mention, a stout Tyler Walker, who looks like he has a full roster situated against you, and yet he's not projected for 100 points.
Yeah, I'd just like to once again say thanks, Daniel, for picking Darren Waller right 2 picks ahead of me and just tilting my face off. And let's go Logan. Week 1 champ, baby.
Let's go, Logan. Yes. In the last year or two, I kind of just agreed that I too am rooting for Logan, and so either way, I win. You know what I mean? That's great.
No
All
matter
right.
how you lose, you win.
Yes, this is how we win. Alrighty. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I have been Frankie.
And I, for the last time on this podcast, am your champ, Cam.
Yes, for the last time
Until
ever,
the end of the
actually.
season. Yeah,
No. We're cutting that part out. And we will catch you all on the next one.
I'm being silenced. Bye.